I'm super excited because today we are chatting with Benjamin. It's all about dry fasting. Now, I got introduced to the subject of dry fasting when I was in India. Randomly met a guy in like a cafe who was like super into really long dry fasts. We had a conversation about it. The audio was terrible. But I also got a lot of people who were then interested in dry fasting and it piqued my interest. So today we're doing a follow-up with better audio and
Woo!
another person. Benjamin, how did you get into dry fasting?
I got into it. I had done a little fasting before I did this, but last June I'm a organic farmer and was in my farm and about halfway through the season and my knee started hurting really bad, and long story short, ended up finding out I have Lyme disease, what it looks like, and then I pretty much was almost got bedridden. I
Wow.
couldn't move blankets off of me. I couldn't put a shirt on. I couldn't start my truck. Kind of had to shut the farm down early, and yeah, and it was really scary. And anyways, I started doing a lot of research on Lyme disease, and it was just kind of like horror story after horror story, of people, that have been misdiagnosed for years to people who have had it for 20 years and can't get rid of it. A lot of people who have just tried everything, and a lot of people like end up doing a lot of antibiotics,
Mhm.
a lot of like steroids, and then they end up having lots of problems from those things.
And
So,
then so how long were you suffering before you started seeking out some sort of natural alternatives?
um, as I found out in June I had it, by August I feel like it was had spread through my entire body, and I was like really facing like what to do. I found a book by this woman. Uh, Her name is Michelle Slater, and it's called Starving to Heal. And she had Lyme disease for like 6 or 7 years, and like had literally started to think of like assisted suicide. That she was so miserable. She found this doctor named Sergei Filanov, from in Russia, uh, who conducted these medical dry fasts, and she read about it and basically flew there to
Mhm.
Siberia for 2 months. She did a 7 day dry fast, and then a 9 day, and then a 9 day. And this was around 2017, and she healed herself. Like
Okay, wow.
she has not had symptoms since then. So I found her book, and I also got led to it through like I like to read the scripture, like the Bible, and uh, there's a Matthew 17:21 talks about prayer and fasting, and that's what first hit my head. And then I immediately found this woman's book, and it was like, well, I'm going to try prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
Um,
There is a lot of fasting in the Bible. And
yeah,
then what but I think in the Bible though, maybe the definition of fasting varies and, how people go about fasts
right.
is certainly not one thing.
Yeah, yeah. You
Um,
can fast from Facebook, fast from talking, fast from,
right.
and I think typically in a lot of those religions, it was from like food or water, or like Jesus in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. People like to associate that with fasting, but
Yeah.
and regardless of what, like it's in about every major spiritual pathway there is. Like it
Mhm.
talks about fasting, and so
Mhm.
and just experiencing it really for me, like when I used to do what juice fast, which I don't really believe is fasting anymore, but it's fasting from something. But like I've just really come to believe like dry fasting is the purest. Like, um,
Right. I'm definitely a juice faster, but,
yeah, that's
I
how
guess
I started.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Now, so just in case people might wonder, so you feel like you would you say that you healed your
a-
Lyme disease or did you
absolutely.
just is it better? Like what's going on with you now?
I feel healed. Like I literally, like I can put my arms over my head. I have weight, muscle mass adding back. Like when I got it, my body started atrophying, like my muscles in the right side of my body, and my leg and my arm, and I'm now like at the gym lifting weights again and putting on muscle mass. And they say when you dry fast that you actually when you put the weight back on your body, that you distribute it more evenly and not in those places where people don't like to like put it so much sometimes.
Mhm.
So it has been interesting. Like I tore my I've allowed my body to intelligently tear itself down, and now it's rebuilding, and I can see that and feel that, and I see it in my immune system, and I see it in my literal physicality, like how my body's growing back. My skin is clearer, my mind is clearer, and I think there's really something to. There's a really good documentary called Heal. I think it's on like Netflix or something, but
Sounds
it's just
familiar.
really connects the mind to the body. And what I can say, I don't even know if I can put words or have figured out what dry fasting has done to my mind. I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe it has spiritually shaped me. Um, in the sense that I think the spiritual pathway is a lot about like wrestling our spiritual nature with our earthly nature.
Hmm.
So being able to have the willpower to like not eat or drink something for 9 days was
Yeah.
very transforming.
Well, tell me about that. So, what are the details? So, when we say dry fasting, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what that means to you
Okay.
and what your routine was, what you were doing.
Okay. When I dry fasting can either be soft dry fasting or hard dry fasting. Soft dry fasting would be you can brush your teeth and you can wash your hands. Some people might even take baths or showers. Hard fasting is absolutely no touching water.
Oh my god. So, like, honestly, I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I thought I'm so glad I asked the question because I thought it was just, I don't know, you just can't drink anything, or obviously you're
Yeah.
not eating any food, but you also can't have water.
Right.
But, like, not even they don't even want water absorbed through the skin.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's what this doctor really believes that yeah, your body when you aren't drinking water, it will absorb water, and it'll just slow down the process of autophagy, which we can talk about 'cause it's a huge part of fasting. Is that a good place to jump right now? Just talking
Sure,
about
and
auto.
we can talk about that, and then
Oh yeah,
let's get into the routine of what you were
yeah,
doing.
yeah. I can do that, and we'll move into autophagy. My routine, like I was so desperate when I did. I just jumped into a 5 day one the first time I ever did it. Um,
And so but what were you when you say you jumped in, it might be helpful, were you just eating a standard American diet? I know you said you're a farmer, so maybe you were eating a little bit better off the farm or
a little bit better for sure. Like I went like 3 years vegan and really was eating really good, and then I moved back home and kind of like started slipping into eating a burger here and there.
you can
So
come
but
back
it
the
wasn't
vegan way anytime you want. We'll have you back.
right, right. But not nothing terrible. I mean, I would have considered myself a completely perfectly healthy person before this Lyme disease like
Okay.
hit me, and it like apparently it can Lyme disease can stay in your like dormant in your body for up to 10 to 20 years, and then it all of a sudden it decides it wants to come out. So
Okay.
um, anyways, so what I did to prepare like the five, I just jumped into the first one. It was like pretty like I did it. I definitely felt as I've done this a lot, I felt I can now see how much more intoxicated I was at that point. uh, the
Hmm.
way my the way I felt, like I just felt a heavy load of toxins. My
During the 5-day dry fast.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, and then I kind of got a little deeper into it. I talked to this doctor online and got a consultation, and they were really kind of like, because I was going for the 9 day, like I was just gonna go. I'm gonna heal myself. I'm desperate. Like I have to do something.
And why
Um,
did you have 9 days as a goal? Was that in the book that you read?
yeah, yeah. And this doctor, so he's been like guiding these for almost 40 years, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So, like, in a big way, a lot of his knowledge is from observation and like watching people. And he says that for a lot of these autoimmune disorders and chronic illnesses, that uh, dry fasting for 9 days is kind of the magic number he saw, where it really goes in deep.
Mhm.
So, in the process of you know, dry
Well,
fasting,
I wanna jump in only to
yeah,
say
yeah,
one quick thing because we're talking about Lyme disease, we're talking about dry fasting, and we're talking about your experience. We're not diagnosing anybody else, we're
right,
not telling anybody else what to do.
right,
We're talking about his experiences, and I think I would recommend, and I'm sure you would too, if this is something that you're curious about, do research. If you have a serious medical condition, you might need to talk to your doctor. Like, we're not telling you what to do, but
right.
we're sharing important information to help people on their journey. right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to put
Yeah.
a disclaimer out there when we get into the details and what this doctor was telling you because you were working with a doctor.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Important.
And in the end, like real quick, I would say like if you are interested in this, you need to move into it properly. It's a lot about doing a lot of the detoxing before the fast, liver
Mhm.
cleanse, intestine cleanse, and I do like coffee enemas. Is really good for your liver and good for clearing your gallbladder. And so I got a lot of the toxins out before I did the long fast because if you just jump into this and you have like a huge toxic load, like you're gonna have really bad detox symptoms, and it could be bad. uh,
What were your symptoms like on that first 5 days since you didn't really prepare?
uh, Mostly like a heavy brain fog and like headaches and stuff for sure. But beyond that, it wasn't wasn't terrible. You could just I don't know how to explain the feeling either of like feeling toxic, just like really slow and based on other fasts, like the last fast that I did the 9 day fast. I flew over like just north of Greece, did a 9 day, came back, took 14 days of break, and did a 7 day. And that 7 day, the last one I did, was like the easiest one I ever did.
Wow.
Um,
So
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 your body
how
gets
many
used to it.
fasts did you do within this time frame to sort of heal yourself?
Last June is when all this started, and I started fasting in November, end of November. I did a 5 day dry fast, and then I did a 6 day dry fast 10 days later, and then I waited not quite a month, and then I bought his protocol. He had a 21-day protocol of how to prepare yourself. I went through that. I did a liver cleanse, and then I did a 5 day water fast after the liver cleanse. Then I took a 10 day break, and then I did a 5 day dry fast. That was February, and then I took a month break, and I flew to Montenegro on March 8th through March 23rd, and I did the 9 day dry fast with 36 other people. And
Wow.
also, while I
9
was there,
days.
yeah, yeah, it's a lot. And while I was there, they did a lot of, and I think it's important to add to it. They did like deep organ massages. A lot of what this doctor believes is like he didn't even really care what you have, like what your disease is. He believes that a lot of everything is in your liver, in your
Mm,
organs. And if you're spiritual, like I've always used the metaphor, like our body is an instrument, and just like a guitar, we have strings that have to be put in tune, and those strings are our organs. Even old school medicine, ancient medicine, they used to use a tuning rod to see if your like liver was in the right frequency.
hmm,
So you tune your body and you tune the overall organism, and then you're healthy. You're in
right.
tune. So that's what I believe, like he was doing. But anyways, it was a lot about cleansing your liver. We did liver. He did leech therapy on me. So
Wow.
yeah, I got
What is
leeches.
what is that like?
It was a lot. You put 5 leeches right over my liver the first time. You leave them on there for 30 minutes, and then you bleed just for like
My God.
a half a day. This one woman bled for almost like 2 days. Uh,
Oh, wait, so but do you feel the leeches? Like, does
yeah,
it feel like they're sucking your blood?
at first they kind of numb it, but mine definitely would hurt every once in a while and be like, whoa. Um, the
But I
doctor
guess
believed,
it's a half hour.
yeah, yeah. It was a lot. Mostly like afterwards when you're bleeding, like you have a big bandage around your stomach and like you can see the blood start coming through, and that made me like very like lightheaded.
Right. So it's just you get 1 leech.
They did it multiple times. I did it on my knee and on my shoulder, but 3 or 4 leeches each time on that spot. And, they say it's really good for your blood, and I don't remember the specifics of that, but I'm sure you could find it if you wanted to Google it or
Mhm.
whatever. And he also says if you, I don't know, is this channel more of like is it a spiritual channel or I don't, because I can
You
go
know,
like really,
I feel like it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's largely been a lot of travel and
yeah,
my talking to people that I meet when I'm traveling. But so
oh
I've
cool,
met who I meet,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then it sort of sparks these interesting conversations. And I don't talk about it. Maybe I haven't talked about it at all on my channel, but I am into juice fasting
yeah, yeah,
myself. And like, so I do it fairly regularly. I did one juice fast, which was for a really long time. I'm not sure my husband will allow me to do another one because I did about a month
Wow.
um, on grape juice.
Oh, wow.
And so that was,
That's a
intense.
big experience.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a lot.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of itching to do another sort of longer one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but so I know what you mean about when you said how the body can break down a little bit, but then when it rebuilds, if you feel like it's rebuilding maybe stronger,
Yeah.
that's how I felt. I felt like certainly 30 days without solid food, right? Like there's a little bit of tissues breaking down,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like it was so negative,
Right.
and because when the body comes back, I feel like the body is intelligent, and it
Totally.
can come back to a really healthy, safe space. And I think too, you talked a little bit about spirituality, but I think when you talk about the mindset and the intention, right? Like being on a fast is very different from starving,
Right. We're
right?
choosing this.
It's a choice and it's an intention, and the body, I think, is aware of that. So
Definitely.
I'm not likening my not eating and choosing to be on a juice fast for 30 days to someone else who's not having enough food for 30
Right.
days,
Yeah. It's a
right?
whole
And your
different.
body is breaking down in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole different mind game too, and that's what I really have found about fasting is it's a mind thing, and I almost think like through healing your mind, you heal your body. And it's like I went into this thinking I'm going to heal my body, and it was really like I'm seeing my mind. There's things happening to my mind that are then healing my body, and so there's
Mhm,
something there, and it's complicated. I'm sure, but it's really fascinating. And yeah, and I ask I guess around the spiritual because I can use I feel like different language. There's different languages to talk about these things, and if you're more of a science person, then you look at your body as a magnet. We
mhm.
truly have a magnetic field, and we have a vibration, a frequency to our body if you can measure it. Uh,
Yeah. Even
Anyway,
yeah, I feel like sometimes it sounds a little I mean, I'm totally with it, but I feel like that can still sound a little woo-woo for some
totally.
people, even though it's true,
Yeah.
like, the fact that we're electrical
Yep.
beings, right? Like, but we don't have the habit to talk about our bodies in terms of the electric flow, and we don't
Right.
understand how currents work in our bodies, and we
Right.
don't necessarily talk about the grounding that we need to do as well, right? Because we're electrical beings and all these
Right.
other things. So
Right.
I think, there's a lot of different avenues, right?
Totally.
And the dry fasting thing is really interesting because I think, dry fasting, like many other healing modalities, I think people find it when they are in crisis, right?
Definitely.
And when they need some help, right? Like but I think the
Yeah.
guy that I interviewed in India, I think he was just sort of on a spiritual path,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just wasn't really that
Mo
into
most of the
eating.
people most of the people I've met are desperate to heal, and most of the people I tell about this, like, "You gotta do this, like, it is profound, like, you will it's a fountain of youth," like, they're not really like, I'm not I'm
Yeah,
not
what
really."
reaction do you get from people? I mean, like, I imagine when you talk about dry fasting, most people would just think that you'll be dead,
Yeah.
right?
Most
Or just
most Americans are like, "Oh, you that's the rule of 3, you can't live 3 days without drinking or without eating or drinking," and, so you gotta get through that with them, and it's like, "Well, I'm, like, living proof that you can," and, uh,
right, right.
there
You're like,
were
"Well, not dead." So
yeah, at this retreat that I went to, there were 5 people who did 9 days, and then they took only a 5-day break, and then they started another 9 days.
and so how did you feel physically? Like, can you talk a little bit about what it was like physically during all of these phases? Because you were, like, dry fasting, a little break, more fasting, like, what was
Yeah,
that like physically?
I definitely, like, lost, I probably weighed normally 165 to 175, and I was, hovering down around, like, 150, and the lowest I got while on a fast was 130, um,
Okay.
so pretty
And wait, how
significant.
tall are you?
5'9".
Okay.
But one of the things with dry fasting, with water fasting, you lose a lot more muscle mass. With dry fasting, you lose a lot more just fat. Your body's basically eating fat and then is converting it to metabolic water,
Hmm.
uh, and so you don't lose. It's It's w- w- it's a far more efficient way, I believe, to fast. Well, they say that 1 day of dry fasting equals 3 days of water fasting. Um,
Now, can we get a little bit TMI? Because I have just
yeah,
like some general questions,
yeah, yeah.
right? And let me know if, like, of course, everything is
It's
optional. Um, but like, what I wonder about is with dry fasting, are you still going to the bathroom?
oh yeah, all the way up to day 9, I peed up 2 to 3 times a day.
And what about number two? Like, is that still
No,
functioning?
that stops. The latest I did that was on a day 5, and the first one I did, I think ever, it was a day 5, and I actually passed parasites, worms.
That would be terrifying.
It was
Like,
like
were they alive or
they were. I don't know. They were just. I
okay.
knew it was them, and I was like, "What is that?" And I looked TMI, looked
Right, right.
deeper, and like sure enough, yeah, it was parasites. I'd heard this and I'd seen it. But yeah, it was one of the first things that I cleaned out.
Which which dry fast was that on? That was on the first one or one of the later
The first one of the first one, yeah.
one of the first
Yep,
ones? Okay, wow. I'm trying
yep.
to figure out how long I would need to dry fast before I get some out, I'm
Yeah,
like,
right.
"Can I just do one 5-day and see what happens?" Or is this like, months later this happened?
Yeah, I would, your body is gonna you might have your order of operations like, "Oh, I'm going in to fix this." But your
Mhm.
body has its own plans. Like you might have things that happen to you as a child that need healed in your body, or and so it's gonna do what it's intelligent, and it's on some level it's the intelligence of our creator or God or universe or whatever you want to call it. And so I believe it knows what it's doing, and like you
Okay, so when we got cut off, you were saying that we might have our own agendas, but our bodies kind of can have their own plan. Things can go differently.
yes. Yep. Yeah, and yeah, even I met this one woman, and she's like my hero. Her name's I guess I won't say her name. But she did like 7 9 day dry fasts at home. She had uh, Lyme disease as well, and she has a story that she used to walk into her neighborhood and walk her dog. And one day after she healed herself, she had some neighbors like stop her and say, "Ma'am, like what happened to that old lady that used to walk this dog?"
Oh my god, are you serious?
Yeah, and like so, but she was so determined and had the willpower that I was like scared, like, man, I hope I don't got to do that many because it is hard, and it's like it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like to be honest, like on many levels, because what's profound about dry fasting is it's going to heal your whole everything, like your whole spiritual mind, body, soul, like everything.
Yeah, 'cause I was gonna say, I guess in a way, maybe it's a silly question, but, like, I feel like what made it so hard in a way, right? Like, what I mean, from my juice fast, eating is very much a habit,
Right.
right? And breaking that habit can be very difficult, where most of us are very addicted to food,
Oops.
and so getting out of that addiction is hard, but, like, so for you yeah, I guess can you just talk more about, like, when you say it's the hardest thing you can do or it's the hardest thing you've done?
Um, Guess all I know is like it's very wavy. It comes in waves. It's like, okay, so like the 9 day, you asked what was important about that. So like between day 1 and day 3, you will eventually go through what's called an acidosis crisis. Like your body will convert to like being acidic, and it's during these crises that you have a healing, a therapy, like a therapeutic uh, event, like basically. Uh,
Mhm.
And so a lot of people, when that starts happening, oh, I feel so bad. So you'll have a headache, or you'll just feel super nauseous, or you'll have your symptoms of whatever you're trying to heal will exacerbate. You want to actually push through that. And once you push through, your body will finally go back to normal. It'll get through this crisis. And people will usually be like, man, I feel like good. I feel amazing. So my pain was so bad that when I would start fasting, I would stop taking medication, and so it hurt really bad. Day 1, 2, 3 was the worst, and by day 3, though, my body started doing its own thing of like taking care of the pain. So
Hmm.
fasting for me became better than normal because my pain went away, and it was just natural. Like your body creates natural and like anti-inflammatories and different things. Where was I going with that?
Well,
Oh yeah, what was painful about it. So yeah, that I think that is hard, but also just like water is the worst on dry fasting. Like you don't really get hungry. Like hungry is not a big thing, but you do want to drink water. And it's like you see a trickling stream, you're like you almost got to stop your body from going and like drinking it.
yep. So here's, I guess, where I have questions about dry fasting,
Mm.
right? As someone who's done juice fasting, I've always sort of had this mentality, and I've read things that say that, like, when you're on a juice fast, you have to make sure you're going to the bathroom, number two, enough. And they would talk about, oh, you need to give yourself enemas, or you need to have some senna tea, or, you need to do, anyway, there was always like this conversation maybe about how you have to make sure you're going to the bathroom enough because you have to make sure you're getting the toxins out. But it sounds like that's not the credo with dry fasting, or it's a different mentality. So I guess, is there any talk about that in the dry fasting world?
I guess at first I am not the the pro at this, and so I'm sure there's a guy Yannick something. He does the dry fasting club, and he's really into it. Like he does all the science and has all the documents and stuff. But um, as far as like when we went, one of the things I noticed the most, like to them actually, when I went there for the 9 day, we had therapy every day. One of the things they did was they called it a traditional Slavic deep organ massage, and they would massage your liver. And so every time I went and I would kind of feel rough, you kind of just feel toxic and tired and like you haven't eaten or drinking nothing in like 5 or 6 days. But uh, I don't know the words for it. I guess you go through a lot mentally too. You purge emotions. You'll just have times when you start crying. Um, so there's that. Um, I'm sorry, I'm kind of looping around here. Forgot what I was talking about before that.
Well, now I have a separate question. Because sometimes I've heard accounts of people who talk about curing things naturally,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's this disease, that disease. And then sometimes after they cure themselves, the doctors or people say, oh, you know what? You didn't have the disease. you know,
Yeah.
you're cured because you were never really sick, kind of a
Mm.
thing, right? So were you diagnosed from a doctor with Lyme disease? Is it something you figured out yourself you had? How did that part work?
I first went and I got a tick panel done, and it's told me I had Rocky Mountain spotted tick fever.
Okay.
Um, it's really long. It's a big rabbit hole with Lyme disease. Like you go start researching it, and like the lab tests can be false positive, false negative.
Yeah.
People get ran around the diagnosis. There's all Lyme disease is actually a bunch of co-infections. So most people have like 5 or 6 different species of these parasites slash pathogens, bacteria. There's like Bartonella, Rickettsia, Ehrlichia, Babesia, Borrelia, and so you have to get specific tests for each one of those, and those tests cost upwards of like $1,000. Um, and then like they can be all over the place, like in a way. And so I did end up saying like, nah, Rocky Mountain spotted tick fever didn't match it, but I've talked to lots of people. When you get in the Lyme world, you basically find what you call Lyme literate doctors or Lyme
Yeah.
illiterate doctors. And so, anyways, like as you get into the more literate doctors, like they understand a little more, but even still, it's like really confusing. So, anyways, long story short, for me, it was like uh, that didn't match. I researched it more and more and more, and I finally said, no, this is Lyme arthritis, and they're like neuromuscular, like pain and
Mhm.
neurological Lyme disease. And so I was like, well, that's has to be what I have. It's either that or rheumatoid arthritis.
Mhm.
So it was one of those two things, and at that point, like I didn't care. Like dry
Right.
fast to me, like one, like I don't make a lot of money. I'm a a farmer. Uh, I'm rich in spirit though. But I didn't have the money to track this down like most people did, and so to
Yeah.
me, dry fasting is a very cheap alternative to, but also with all my heart, I believe it's the best alternative, and I believe it's for any disease. But anyways, it didn't cost me, and I knew that whatever it was, it would get it. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if it was an autoimmune disorder. It did not matter what it was. I was going to like heal it. Um, so that
But now yeah. So but you say you didn't wanna spend a lot of money, and dry fasting is, obviously it's free to not eat.
right.
But you did say you were working with this doctor. I think you said you left the country at times to do some
Yep.
of these things. So, how were the prices with that? Was that not crazy expensive?
It really wasn't. I actually reached out to like one day I was just like desperate, and I reached out to about 13 of my friends and a text message. Told them what I was going through, and I didn't have insurance or money, and about this doctor. And anyways, I was able to raise about $5,000 in 3 days. The retreat itself cost 2,400, and then the plane ticket was about I think 1,500, and then just various things in between. So yeah, about $5,000 I was able to get over there. So not terrible, like,
Mhm.
but, more than some people have, I'll say too, though, like, it's one
Yeah.
of the things that is profound that I wanna make available more to people is access to this, because I believe, again, with all my heart, like, it is a one-stop fix, like, for about anything. If you go into a doctor and you have gastrointestinal issues, you got skin issues, you got eczema, you got ear infection, fast. A doctor could prescribe you here, 3-day fast, here, 5-day fast. But like
Mhm.
how quickly, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but how quickly would that cripple big pharma to have people, and
Yeah.
even people who don't have access to good health care, like to be able to do these
Right.
things? Um,
Right.
so it's huge.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of animals, when they're sick, they naturally fast, right?
Exactly.
They stop eating, they stop
Right.
taking foods in, and I think a lot of people have that natural reaction when they're sick, and I even sometimes hear people fighting it. They'll say, "Oh, I don't have an appetite, but I need to eat."
Yep.
And sometimes I'm like, "But do you?"
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Like, if your body is telling you that it does not need or want food, why push through that, right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
even the doctor talked about kids, like, even because a lot of people, like, force kids to, "You need to eat, you need to eat," and it's like, "Do they?" Like,
right, right.
yeah.
And certainly, I mean, a lot of the things that people feed their kids, that's a separate issue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's another talk, but
That's a that's another talk for another day. Um, but yeah, wow. But so what did you only have one fast then that was supervised and the others were on your own?
right,
So I know you said the longer one was
yep.
supervised.
Yeah, I wanted to go, and now I feel comfortable doing a 9-day alone too.
Mhm.
Um Uh, but yeah, I wanted to go and see what they did and like understand and see the process. And the therapies are a big deal. I think there's a lot to be said that Western medicine wouldn't like talk about the organs and how important they are, and even how important their position in your body can be.
Hmm.
Like, because that's one of the things they really did with these organ massages. They said sometimes people's like kidneys will be tilted, and then you have like organ running into running organ, and in the West at least, or the East, they believe in things like chi or energy, and that
Hmm.
energy flows through our body in a certain way, and when it gets restricted, you get sick. So it's one of
I
them
know
more.
some of my organs are in the wrong spot. I need some of those massages.
Right, right.
I'm
After
totally
so one of the things, like I was telling you, whenever I went in and they do these deep organ massages, like there's a Russian guy, and he would my liver, you could literally hear it start gurgling, and he would say, "Oh, it's good," and I was like, because you're releasing bile,
yeah.
which has toxins in it and stuff. So your liver, on the last few days, people like use a lot of ice packs over their liver because it gets really hot. But it isn't a hot like you don't run a temperature. But what he says is when you dry fast, every cell turns into like a thermonuclear reactor, and then intelligently just starts wiping out the bad stuff, and it makes sense to me. Like, man, I can't. I don't think they have science to show this stuff, but I don't know. There's just an intuition about it.
Mhm. And now you've done up to 9 days. The guy in my video, he was doing, like, really long things, but, like, I guess my question is, did you ever feel unsafe? And I ask that only because, so I'm remembering, I actually tried to do a dry fast, I think one time. I don't remember. Okay, truly, I don't remember if it was a dry fast or a water fast, but I know it was one of the 2 because it was something different. Because as I said, I have a lot of experience with juice fasting.
Right.
But I remember that the first day of whatever it was, dry fast or water fast, I started feeling horrible and really weak and kind of lightheaded in a way that I was concerned.
Hmm.
And I like put some salt in my mouth. Just I don't know why, but it made me start feeling better.
Hmm.
Um, but so that was my only one experience with either water fasting or dry fasting. So I wonder, were there any moments where you were concerned and by the way, I ended it after that. I was like, it's not for me.
Done.
But at least at that time, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder, did you have any moments where you were like,
I really didn't ever. No. I
okay,
On the 9-day one, on about day 8, like I was getting dizzy more often, but the doctor just said, like, get up, make sure you get up slow. Like,
yeah,
uh, he there's a new documentary out called Fasting. It's about two brothers who did a 40-day. They did a 20-day water, and then right after that a 20-day juice. There's a guy in it who really speaks a lot to the science of this, and it's really they did good at it.
hmm,
Uh, but there's a lot of things you expect to happen through this process that are short. He called short-lived or self-limiting. That you're going to have exacerbations of symptoms. You're going to have certain things come up that are a crisis because your body's working on things. But you do have to know the difference, and that's why, like, if you really want to do this safe, like super super safe, like, do it with assisting,
yeah,
or what I would recommend is move into it so slowly that your body will get used to it. Start with 1 day, like a 1 day water fast. After you do liver cleansing, like, get on a raw food or a vegetarian diet. I did a liver cleanse where I drank like castor oil and lemon juice.
hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of prepping that I think is actually really important and would make your time a lot easier.
I know someone who had a
Uh,
bad experience with a liver cleanse, but
oh,
I think you're right about taking it slowly. I think sometimes people do want to jump into things too quickly.
yeah,
And like if you go from McDonald's every day straight into like some extreme fasting, I that seems terrifying,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I
But
mean, imagine the toxin load, because you're most people, even people that are healthy, like, are carrying huge loads of toxins just because that's the world we live in.
right, right.
Um,
Who's living in these pristine environments where we're, you
right.
know, all organic food, clean air.
You're right. I even have I do okay, but it's definitely challenging to keep everything super perfectly clean, because the doctor definitely recommends organic food and
Right.
this and that. That's something that we could talk about. That's important too. Is the refeeding.
Yeah.
They say 70% of your healing comes after you break the fast, and so that's a lot, and it's really
Right.
important.
Yeah.
Really important. So the way we broke a fast after a 9-day was, he gave us what's called melt water. So he has you freeze water, and you let about 70% of it freeze, and then you have 30% of it that's unfrozen,
Okay.
right? And so that
So it's like
30%,
an ice cube that's largely frozen, but there's still a little wet
yep,
in the middle.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep, that little wet in the middle is the impurities, and so you get rid of those, and then when you break the fast, you melt that water, and it's supposed to be structured. I don't know if you've ever heard of structured water.
I have. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
So you're
Yeah.
saying you take an ice cube or you take some ice, put it maybe in your cube, freeze it till it's about 70% frozen. The part that's in the middle, the 30%, you drain it.
Yep.
And then you take the ice cube, melt that,
Yep.
and that's the water that you drink.
Yep.
Okay. Can't you just have, like, some distilled water or something like that?
Well, he believes like that it's structured, that if you were to look at the structure of it, that it would be different. Like, it's basically the idea that naturally filtered water that moves down through the earth spins, and so it has a structure that is more pristine. It's the same water your body, when you're dry fasting and your body makes metabolic water out of your fat, it's the same high quality water. And I'm
Okay.
sure there's more of a science behind it. I'm not the doctor, so I don't
I'll go
know.
with it, I'll go with it. Okay,
Right.
so you
But
have this melt water.
yep.
Now, how much melt water can you have on the first day off of your dry fast?
Yep. So I would, yeah. You want to drink a cup in about 15 minutes. So like a coffee
Okay.
mug, and then you want it to be warm, and you just want to sip, like really swish every drink around in your mouth, and then swallow. And
And how
uh,
warm? Just
I did it, as much as you can tolerate. You
okay,
can go as hot as you want, but you at least want it above like water body temperature.
okay.
Just the idea being that if it's cold, your body has to use energy to heat it up.
Mhm, okay.
Um, Maybe you could be cutting hairs with some of this. I don't know, but like
No, I love it all. I'm so
I
curious.
just
Okay,
listen to the doctor.
so
uh,
every so in 15 minutes, you have 1 cup of melt water.
yep. And then so maybe the next 3 hours or however you can just keep drinking water, but just sip it slow and start drinking it more and more.
Mhm,
After about 3 hours, he makes a probiotic out of what's called whey protein.
okay.
And it takes weeks to make, but it's just a super highly concentrated shot of probiotics. So about 3 hours after you break the fast, drink the water, then you take these probiotics.
Mhm,
Um, then let's see, a couple hours later, you can drink like veggie broth or eat some veggie soup, cabbage, no salt. You
mhm,
really don't bring salt back in until probably almost like day 6, 5 or 6. It
mhm,
can really be dangerous if you eat too much salt too
mhm.
fast. Your legs will swell up like elephant legs.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yep.
definitely I wanna
So
do that.
if
You
that
know, I
happened,
noticed yeah?
if that happened to you, you'd want to go immediately back to like water fasting.
Okay, wow.
Um,
I was gonna say, when I told you I did that long grape juice fast,
mm,
and I'm a person who has liked the taste of salt. At the end of that, I lost, like, salt didn't add anything to food anymore. It was
mm,
weird,
yeah.
and it was like food tasted
Well,
just really good, and food tasted normal without salt,
well,
and salt
that's
tasted strange.
that's how I've got. Like it's been bizarre, because I drink a lot of milk kefir now. I only eat fish. I eat cabbage. I don't do gluten. I do a little bit of. Anyways, my diet has like adjusted, but I've actually learned to
Yeah.
love it. Like uh,
I'm back on the salt. That was a while ago.
yeah, yeah. I
So
do
I
love salt. This doctor actually says, and he quoted some study that he read that about people who did like low amounts of salt, medium amounts, and high, and that he's a believer in salt. That the people with the
okay.
highest amounts of salt, it was good for them. They were in
I'll just say, but the
better
salt
shape.
thing is interesting because I wasn't
Yeah,
trying to get off salt, but it was
yeah,
really after doing this long juice cleanse, salt
huh,
tasted strange.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Reminds me of kind of sugar. Whenever I got like, I just can't do super sweet things anymore. Where I used to be like, oh. It's
Right.
interesting. Yeah, the body I think definitely develops a probably like a craving on a level, but also a sensitization to tastes.
Mhm.
Um,
So you bring salt back around day 6, and so
yep,
is what are you eating then? So the end of day 1, you're on broth and maybe some veggie soup.
yep. By the evening, we can have fish soup.
Okay. That's kinda
Next,
fast.
yeah,
Like
but it's boiled and it ain't like a lot of soup. But yeah,
yeah.
it's quicker than you would think.
It's
Uh,
quicker than I would think
yeah,
for, like, eating solid food, like, this is day 1.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It
Okay.
was kind of for me when I was doing it home alone. I wasn't bringing it in that fast, and then we went to this, and he was bringing it in faster. So I was like, oh, game on. It
Yeah,
was,
okay.
I mean, it was pretty subtle though. Like they were in control of our meal, giving us our meals, so we couldn't have seconds and thirds. They only gave us one bowl, and
Okay.
there's definitely like a lots of care given to like slowly refeeding.
Mhm. It wasn't
Um,
like a pig out of like,
right,
"Soup's on."
it came on.
Right.
Yeah, so day 2 and 3, more of the same. Oh yeah, usually on day 1 after we broke with the water and then drank the probiotic, they he makes a thing called compote, like fruit compote. You just take like blueberries, apples, pears, apricots, and you boil them in water, and that's how you restore your glycogen levels. Because basically, that's the first thing your body will devour is your glycogen, sugars, and stuff. So when you stop fasting, you want to build those levels up immediately. And he just does it. We were constantly drinking mugs and mugs and mugs of compote, like for
Okay, wow.
5 or 6 days of recovery that we were there. So it's my favorite too.
Okay.
The compote's good.
Okay. Sounds good.
um, but yeah, you start moving into things like on the second and third day, like oatmeal, or I've come to love buckwheat. Buckwheat's really good. Buckwheat, like a porridge, no salt, no raw foods until like day 3. They believe that
Wow.
you'll see. I've read different things with different dry fasters. So this is potentially controversial, or people have different ideas of it. I just like this doctor's like done it so long. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not really arguing with those ways. I'm just going to follow his way because
Yeah.
like,
And I think it's important too, like, not everything is a religion, right? Where there's one
right,
way, and
right,
this is the path, and if you don't follow it, you're doomed for life, right?
right. They'll
I
even
think
say they kind of tell us that it's kind of like the Russians are funny, like on a level. This doctor, every time people would ask him question, he'd give you an eye roll, like oh. So he was funny, but it was more of because he's kind of like, look, like you're an individual, and your body is going to tell you things that your body's going to tell you. I
yeah,
can't answer that for you. Like you
yeah,
guys have to get to know your body and listen to it and communicate with it, and that's important for all of us because like we do have different makeups, and if you get into like Indian Ayurvedic medicine, you're dealing with different what they call doshas, you know,
right.
and I think that's makes a lot of sense because I see it. Like I'm kind of like a furnace. Like I burn really hot. And
Okay, so you're Pitta.
yep, exactly. So that's I don't know, that's a it gets interesting, and so you can start to develop these things for yourself once I think you get more aware of how to do it and you listen to your
Right,
body better. Like my refeeding might be way different than yours.
right,
Um,
right.
but
Wow, I
yeah,
love it.
yeah, it's wild. It's a very profound experience and lots of like I said purging of emotions too.
Yeah,
Uh, dreams. The hardest thing I think for me was sleep on about day 6, 7, 8, or 7, 8, 9. It gets really hard to sleep. Uh,
okay.
and the time, like time slows down to where every second is an hour. And so like, life goes so fast right now, but you start dry fasting, like time is gonna move slower than you ever imagined.
Yeah.
Uh,
I did a silent meditation retreat, and I feel like time starts to move differently when you're not speaking and you have no inputs. Like it's no cell phones, no books, like there's nowhere to hide,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And things are different in that
for real.
experience.
Yeah.
So I think, I think
We
I can
live in
understand.
we live in such a highly stimulated world. It's
Yeah,
when you get away
more so
from that.
every day.
Yeah, totally. Um,
Wow. Well, this
yeah,
has been so amazing. I'm so glad that we got a chance to do this
yeah.
chat. Did I forget anything? Is there anything you wanted to say or tell us about
Um,
dry fasting and your experience?
not just really like for me, it's been the most profound experience, and like this Lyme disease, even something that I thought was a curse, turned out to be a blessing, and I don't take things for granted like I used to, and I've just learned so much from it. So and yeah, and really what it, like I said, what it's done to my mind in a way has been really the profound thing. Like more patience, more self-control, more appreciating food and water. Uh, yeah, but yeah, beyond that, I think we hit everything. We hit how to prepare for it, what it was like during the two. I think earlier I didn't get to say like on the acidosis crisis that happens on day 1 to day 3, that the big one on happens from day 7 to day 9, and so that's why he does 9 days, is because to get that second crisis, and that's the one he says really ends up healing like these chronic illnesses and autoimmune diseases and stuff. So
Wow.
yep, and then the refeeding. So I think we kind of covered all the. There's, I'm sure there's more, but
You know you're in a new world when it's like people want the healing crisis, right? It's like
you're right,
you want to have to deal with that, I guess, right? So that you can see what's on the other side.
totally. Well, and it
But
was like every fast I did was, I got progressively better each one. Like I was taking 3,200 milligrams of Motrin before I started my first one. By the time I got
mhm,
to the third one, I had cut that in half, and it just kept going like that. And it'll also, like the lady that I told you was my hero, she had moments where she went backwards, or it seems like you do because your body is working on things. And so after this 9 day fast, I came out of that fast and I had pain come back into my hands and feet worse than I've ever had it. And it was weird to have to like, well, I just did this. Is it not working? Like, but it was actually a good indicator that my body was working on those things. And so, you just, again, like, got to listen to your body. And like, sometimes it might be counterintuitive that what you're feeling as pain might be your body actually doing the work that it needs to do. And so I think that's probably the hardest thing for some people as they get into this, is like how to trust that, and how to not, oh, I gotta quit, I gotta quit, I gotta go to the emergency room, I got, because your mind's freaking out. Like,
right,
uh,
right. Right. And I think it's also important to get some guidance, right? To not do it
yeah,
alone. And
right,
I hope that maybe eventually we can have more like healing centers in different places where these
totally,
kinds of things are accessible, because I think to do it on your own is scary. And we
yeah,
need more experts and we need more people kind of shepherding this
yep,
process and doing these things so that it's not, because I think yeah, it maybe it should be a little scary
yeah,
to do this alone
yeah, yeah, yeah.
at home with, maybe no one around to look. If you live alone, I don't know.
Well, it's one of those things, like, it really is a mind game. Your mind is going to tell you most of the times that it wants to quit before your body has to. And that's in something even like running. Like, how many people run and you're like, "Oh, I'm done," but your body could have went on for miles and miles longer. Like, it's kind of like that. And so, but if a person's mind is like the first couple of days freaking out, then you can guarantee the body's going to freak out. So there
Right.
is something to like getting used to it, getting calm, getting understanding what your symptoms are. Oh, that's natural. Oh, that's not natural. The
Mhm.
one thing that stood out the most that he said that you should break a fast for is if your heart rate goes up above 120. So that was the big like,
That's important.
yeah, yeah, that was the most, like, obvious one, and it's not like if you go walking, and then you come back and do your heart, it should be 120, but if you're just chilling and it's 120, you should, like, maybe look at that. There's another thing the doctor, said we should do is walk 6 miles a day on a 9-day fast, like, even on a 9-day fast. Um,
Wow.
and the woman who I told you healed hers in Siberia that wrote the book, he said she used to he said she was amazing. She would just walk for, like, she definitely walked 6+ miles every day, and sometimes more over hills and stuff. And but it's good for your organs. Just walking, the massage, the slow like bouncing of your organs is really good for it. So yeah, it isn't necessarily a standstill thing, but it's, you don't want to be doing hardcore labor.
Right. Right. Okay. Something for me to digest.
Yeah, yeah,
Thinking
and
about all of this.
that book is really good too, and I'm not really plugging her, but, like, a lot of people with Lyme have found that book, and, like,
Oh,
this
what's the name
doctor,
again?
uh, Starving to Heal in Siberia by Michelle Slater. and she actually went to this doctor's retreat, and people got to meet her, and like everybody talks about her. And but ever since she wrote that book, like he has Lyme patients just coming to him constantly. Probably over half the people that I was there with had Lyme disease. So,
Okay,
and
wow.
I've met multiple people that have healed it now too. So it's it's real, and I think it's amazing. Like you were saying earlier, or you were talking about doctors, and I've talked to my like primary care physician, and my wife and I are having a child, and we went to a doctor's appointment today, and you tell these doctors about it, like, yeah, I healed my Lyme disease, and they're just like, I don't know, it's like their pride's hit. So I don't know, like they just don't acknowledge it, and I'm like, look, I don't know. He said, "Oh, you better be careful doing that." I'm like, look, this is weird because I
You better be
literally like.
careful healing yourself.
Yes. Like, I literally healed something that some people fight their whole lives, and you're sitting here telling me you're concerned, like anyways, it's just, I think I told him, I was like, "It's no offense, but, I think, like, doctors are institutionalized in a sense, and Western doctors get out of these institutions, and they have, like, this is how it is, and they don't really look any further than that." And
Yeah.
that's a
Well, they're trained,
yeah, totally.
and they're trained to to do what they're trained to do,
Yeah,
and they're not trained to teach people how to fast, and
yep,
they're just not trained to teach people about herbs, you
right.
know? So
It's
they're
kind of
good at
this
yeah.
It's this interesting thing I see with the East and the West. If you look at the hemispheres of our brain, you have left brain is very logical, masculine, right brain is very intuitive, spiritual. And then I look at the East and the West, and the West is very logical and all about matter and logic. And then the East is very spiritual and intuitive. So it's like we have this thing going on a large scale of like the two sides of the mind of humanity, and they could come together, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, right. We need that brain integration.
Yes, Christ consciousness.
Yeah, integrate the sides of our mind.
Yep. So,
Wow.
but
Wow. This has been such a great chat.
well, cool. I appreciate it, and I hope you get what you needed out of it. And
Definitely. Thank you
yeah,
for joining me and for having this conversation today.
absolutely, you're most welcome. I'm glad we connected, and please feel free. Always an open inbox if you ever have any questions or get curious yourself or whatever. I want to share this with the whole world.
I love it.